I'm Kevin Costner's illegitimate son,
And I'm Marcy.
and we are Watchers of the Basement, Yellowstone edition.
We're
We are back.
back.
Marcy, how you doing?
I'm doing good. If you haven't watched episode 9 of season 5 of Yellowstone, do not watch any more of this podcast until you've watched that. Otherwise, you will get some spoilers. But yes, I'm excited to be back. It's been 2 years since we've had new episodes of Yellowstone drop. So yeah, I'm excited to be back talking about Yellowstone and kind of knowing what's going on with the Duttons and everybody in their orbit.
Marcy, there was a lot of talk about what was going to happen. I mean, so much has happened off screen in the real world, revolving around the show between Taylor, Kevin Costner, and a bunch of other actors. And there's been talk about the popularity of the show, whether it's going to lose steam. For those who don't know, episode 9 of season 5 had a debut of 13.2 million viewers. Now spans across CNT, MTV, CBS, and Paramount TV. So that just shows you the excitement, the anxiousness, the curiosity of how this world is going to go as far as possibly post John Dutton world. And before we jump into it, I just have some thoughts about the show that I want to share with Marcy. And Marcy, please share with me as well. Um, Taylor Sheridan is the showrunner of the show. Not only the showrunner, but he plays Travis in this series, and he's built a legacy of not only just Yellowstone, but he's built a Yellowstone universe of 1883, 1923. There's other feature, the Four Sixes that's coming out, the Texas Rancher show. He's built a powerful entity of shows revolving this Yellowstone show. And a lot of times with creators, especially when you hit on something, the egomaniac nature can come out. And I don't know much about Kevin Costner and the fallout between him and Kevin, but I do know this. Recently, this stuff that's come out, the guy who plays Rip, Cole, Taylor has had issues with him as well. There's a lawsuit
Ooh.
ongoing about competing coffee coffee giants that they invested money into. And with that coming out, it makes me pose the question of the legacy of Taylor Sheridan and what he has moving forward. Um, this show has exploded over the last 6 7 years. Is He has become the golden goose of Paramount TV and Paramount Plus and the Paramount family. Um, don't fuck this up, Taylor, for us. Please do not fuck this up for us, because what's happening now is that, for those who don't know, Kevin Costner is gone, and you find that out very early on in this episode, and moving forward, what that may look like. I say all that to say this: you have a giant with this show, and don't let your ego be the reason why this giant becomes a non-giant moving forward. And I think with Taylor, he has another show coming out with Demi Moore and John Hamm, and Billy Bob Thornton is coming out in a few days as well. And there's been reports of his difficulties, of him being difficult to work with. And when you run off a person like Kevin Costner off a project like this, a guy who's been in Hollywood for the better part of 4 decades,
Yeah.
you create a reputation, oftentimes not good, of being a hard ass. And now with Cole Hauser, who plays Rip, I don't know where this is going to go moving forward, but he needs to be careful. What are your thoughts, Marcy, on that?
Well put. Yeah. Like you said, we don't know everything that went on behind the scenes. Obviously, it seemed like there were just a lot of things that have happened. Obviously, we've been through a whole pandemic, right? Like the last 5 years, everybody's been through it. Um, so I think that adds pressure to it. But more importantly, Kevin Costner's had a lot going on in his personal life. He went through a divorce last year. Right around the same time, all of this Yellowstone drama was coming out. So we also don't know how much of his personal life also just kind of affected his work, his working relationship with Taylor, his other ambitions that he wanted to pursue outside of Yellowstone. I think one of the reports was that he really didn't want to come back to Yellowstone because they weren't giving him as much time to work on his, I think it was called the Horizon movie or whatever. So yeah, you take that with a grain of salt. You don't want to say, well, maybe it's Kevin that's difficult to work with, or it's Taylor. But then again, like you said, then it came out that Hauser had sued Taylor, or they had sued each other about their competing coffee companies. So then you're like, okay, is it really Taylor that's toxic and difficult to work with? Is it Cole? Who knows? It could be all three. It could be none of them. It could just be that things happen between coworkers, between people in general. But I think Kevin Costner was probably just really done with Yellowstone at this point. I think he wanted to pursue other things. Kevin Costner has made his money, right? Like, he doesn't need more money, more recognition. He is a bona fide star. Like, I was kind of shocked that he was coming back to network TV or, streaming TV after just being, a movie star for so long. So I think he was always just going to go and not going to want to stay. Cole Hauser, I think, is a little bit different. Obviously, like, he may or may not need the money either. He may or may not need the gig. So I think that's a little bit different. Maybe his problems with Taylor weren't about Yellowstone or the work. It was about something else completely. So I think that might also impact his decision to want to stay on Yellowstone and just kind of not rock that boat. So there's a lot of kind of things to think about. But it will be interesting to see moving forward how all of those things have factored in to this season that they have completed, this final season of Yellowstone. Also, taking into account that there was a whole actor strike last year. So there was a lot of things that have affected this last season of Yellowstone. That's why it's taken 2 years for new episodes to drop. So I'm very anxious to see like how all of those things have affected what we see on the screen, or how they don't affect it, other than John Dutton is gone and he's been killed off. And R.I.P. John Dutton, you are no longer needed. We can move on with another generation of Duttons.
Let's go to the chat. Texas Parthead, thank you for joining us. One of our veteran attendees. She said, it's so hard because Yellowstone is John Dutton. I'm curious to see how this plays out because I felt this episode was a bit of a flop. I didn't like the structuring of the episode. And I agree, Texas Parthead.
Yeah.
The episode, and don't get me wrong, the 13 million people that watched, I think, was more so of the excitement and relief of it being back, but also simultaneously to see where this is going to go moving forward. When you watch this episode, it gives real estate, at least to me, that Rip and Beth are going to be the people who carry the show now. That's what it's setting up to be. Beth has always been a fan favorite. Rip has always been definitely a fan favorite amongst everybody who watched the show. And it's going to set them up now to really carry this. Now, there's been rumors about a Beth and Rip spinoff. Nothing's been confirmed just yet. This could lead it to that. But again, with the whole, Cole Hauser and Taylor Sheridan thing, we don't know if that's going to be a thing either. I knew with the Kevin Costner thing that we may not get a lot of him this season. I didn't think in the opening scene that was going to get him dead in the governor's mansion of apparent suicide. That was kind of a surprise to me, and again, more so leads to the issues that him and Taylor have. Now, how much footage did Kevin shoot in the second half of the season 5? We don't know, but I guess in their minds, they felt like the footage that they did have wasn't enough to really put into the show and I guess build off of that. So, it's going to remain to be seen to see how this looks moving forward. But the glimmer of hope that we do have is that it gives these young actors who play Beth, who play Rip, who play I want to say Spencer Dutton, but I'm thinking about not.
Casey.
Thank you, Kacey. It gives the two Dutton kids and Rip, the limelight to really blossom and take this role and run with it. What are your thoughts on that, Marcy?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they set them up, how they show them moving forward. Are they going to be able to move forward now with John gone? Obviously, Beth has the support of Rip, of Kacey, but I think John was her anchor. I think John was what really drove her, right? She did most of the things she did because of John, because of how much he loved the ranch. She didn't necessarily want to keep the ranch. She didn't care about keeping the ranch in the family, but she knew how important that was to John. Therefore, she made it important to herself. So I'm eager to see how they're able to move past this. I think Beth is going to let this anger fuel her into just getting revenge on Jamie. I definitely think by the end of the season, we're going to see more people die. At least one more person die. I don't think there are some characters I don't think make it out of the season alive. So I'm interested to see what they do with that. Will it be Jamie? Will it be Beth? Will it be Rip? Will it be Kacey? We don't know. It's just so many things are up in the air, especially because they've killed John. So like what else is there to do? They've killed like the main character. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, and for those who don't remember, going back to last season, John is governor. He's governor now. He's moved to the governor's mansion. He split his time between the ranch and the governor's mansion, and Rip has taken more of the daily operations on the ranch. There were financial issues with the cattle leasing, with the cattle feeding the cattle on the land. They didn't have the money, so they thought it would be cheaper. Which I guess I'm not a rancher, so I don't know, but you think it would cost more money to move cattle from Montana to Texas, but that's what they ended up doing. So a lot of the members of the Yellowstone Ranch are split between Montana and Texas. So going to this season, and we know the company that Sarah Atwood works for, who is now pulling the strings behind Jamie's wants and desires of obtaining power and hopefully building the airport and a couple other factions on top of the Yellowstone Ranch. We now know that Jamie asked for the hit, and Sam and Sarah Atwood executed it. And even though it looks like an apparent suicide, we both know it's not, as they go back 6 weeks prior to show you the setup of the hit. I'm more curious to see Kacey, how he responds. We all know Beth. Jamie has taken so much from Beth throughout the duration of this series. I mean, we find out that it was the hysterectomy when she was a child, when she was pregnant. Now she can't bear children. He took that away from her. Now took her father away from her. Beth may be a sacrificial lamb moving forward. I think this gives opportunity for Kacey to step into that role of payback, of fighting the ground fight physically, and Beth fighting the fight behind the scenes. But what are your thoughts on Kacey, and how do you think moving forward he's going to move now, and about his father's death? And then do you think he goes the more violent route, or do you think they fight him more intellectually in courts and behind the scenes?
That's difficult to tell, I think, right now, just because Kacey has been kind of reluctant to see what Beth sees in Jamie. He doesn't know that he killed that reporter back in, what was it, season 2, season 3. He doesn't know that Jamie killed his own father. He doesn't know all of those really, really dark things about Jamie. So I think he wants to believe that Jamie wouldn't ever, order a hit on John or be responsible for John's death. So I think if he is able to find out the truth, I do think he will. I think that will awaken something in him to want to go the violent route, especially because he's also been through a lot of trauma recently. His baby and Monica's baby died not too long, ago in the show timeline. So he's also been through a lot. Um, I think he would be capable of it, but I think at this point, he's really just not knowing what's going on and just kind of going off what Beth is saying that nope, it was Jamie. I've seen him do dark things. I know what he's capable of. He's going to want to find out first before I think he does anything super drastic. And we saw the start of that when he called the authorities and he's like, hey, who's in charge of this investigation? What's it looking like? What's going on? And I think that might have sparked something in him to be like, something's not right here. I really need to dig into this deeper and I need to be strategic about how I do it because I don't know who's involved.
Yeah, I agree. I think we get a souped up Rip 2024 version of a Rampage by Kacey once he gets the evidence of what happened to his father from Jamie. I mean, if you're Jamie, I don't know where you hide now. Like Beth has a strong inclination of what he's done. Does a company that's trying to take over John's ranch protect Jamie? We don't know. It's remained to be seen. I want to talk about Rip a little bit here. So during the event of John's death, his parents' suicide, Rip is he's in Texas with the cattle. Him and some of the Yellowstone mates, Teeter, the rest of the clique, and he's now you see him more as a de facto leader now. And it's interesting to me because he's always been like the bunkhouse leader and the guy that runs everything. But it's like there was almost like foreshadowing his movements of like him taking more of a responsibility and him delegating more too to people around him. Where do you think this goes with Rip? Because people forget Rip was taken in by John as a kid, and like he was that lonely stray who he had to kill his own dad because his dad killed his mom, and so John took him in at a young age. So that's essentially he sees John as a father more than anything. How do you think this affects Rip moving forward?
I definitely think if Kacey doesn't go violent, it's going to be Rip. We know Rip is capable of it. We know Rip can be strategic about it. He's cold-blooded when he has to be. Obviously, he has a soft spot for the Duttons, for Beth. He's able to have love for the people that he feels deserve it, while also exacting justice on people he feels need it. And that justice is taking them to the train station. And too bad. You deserved it, apparently, if Rip's taking you to the train station. I think he will take more of a leadership role, but I think a lot of it will be just being that support for Beth. I think Beth is already unhinged, right? I think just part of being Beth is being unhinged. I think while this may drive her more to figure out what's happening and to save Yellowstone against market equities and everything they're going to do and against Jamie, I don't know how Beth doesn't unravel from this, given all of the other trauma she's been through. So I think Rip's definitely going to be that support. So I think if Kacey doesn't go violent, like I said, it would be Rip. And like Texas Spotter had said, yeah, I think with Kacey, he may be walking that balance of the violence or not, because again, he doesn't want to be like his father. He knows that's not what Monica wants from him. And then, in previous season, he'd also had that dream or that vision. He said he saw the end of us. So maybe he might think, if I turn into those baser, violent desires or that baser violent nature, am I expediting the end of us? Because it's just, we know that violence begets violence. And in the end, nobody really wins. It's just violent, and then people die. Nobody ever really wins. So he may be grappling with that of like, am I just exacting more violence on people? But then like, what do I get out of it? My father is still dead. Our ranch is probably still going to be taken from us. So how do I move forward?
Yeah, and speaking of that vision, I mean, we see the wolf again in episode 9 as well, right outside their cabin. So you do pose a good point of like, I feel like that vision or premonition is it's something that he's thinking about of moving more carefully because now he has more to lose than ever. Like his dad is not here anymore to protect them. His dad is not here anymore to lay down, the groundwork to like make sure the ranch is protected. Like he has to move carefully. And I think, 2 years is a long time for the show to be off air. And when you see, Tate is like he's like a young man now. Like he's 6 foot something it looks like now. Like I think seeing Tate and like Monica and like I think that's gonna give Kacey more pause to like not be so reckless because he had the real estate to be reckless in the past because he knew if I go to jail, if I get caught off or
Mm.
caught up, Dad's there to protect me. You don't have that net anymore. It's you, Beth, and Rip, and those three loose cannons, man. I don't know who protects them moving forward.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree on that. And I think also, right, he may be like, yeah, I've got to like avenge my father and like keep the ranch because of family legacy or whatever. But if you go that route, maybe you keep your land and you avenge your father, but at what cost? You might lose Monica or Tate. Somebody might kill them too to get back at you, or they just might not want to see you go down this route. So, yeah, maybe you save your ranch, but at what cost? You have also lost your family. So I think that's going to factor for Kacey. For Beth, I don't think so much. Again, she's like, I've got Rip, but then like, what else do I have to live for? My father's gone. I wasn't able to save his legacy. And I think that's going to weigh heavily on her. Like she wasn't able to fix it for John, like she'd, tried and done for him before. I think she's going to feel like she failed him, especially if market equities moves forward with their plans, but also she wasn't able to save him physically. Like he was still killed.
Absolutely. And speaking of market equities, now they have a clear path now, right? Like there's no John Dutton. They probably think it's easy pickings now. Sarah Atwood. So now Sarah is, we find out she's the one that put the hit. We know that Jamie gave the final go ahead. There was something about Jamie in this scene where he's at home and he gets emotional. No, he's in the office and he gets emotional. Do you think that emotion was regret of what he did, or more so of like a sociopathic notion of like I did what I did, now it's time to move
Mhm.
forward and like put this front up because like he got emotional right before he went to the media to
Yeah.
say what happened to his father. Do you think that was regret, or do you think that was more so him putting a front for the cameras?
It felt genuine, and that might have just been the way that he played it, right? Um, it felt genuine to me. I think it felt like he was like, "Oh shit, like this really happened. I was just saying out loud that I wanted my father dead and now this has happened." I think we see that a lot with Jamie. He'll act or he'll do something and then later he's like, "Oh shit, like I shouldn't have done that. What am I going to do?" Maybe it's regret and guilt, but a lot of times it's panic of like, "Okay, now that this has been done, how does this affect me? Now I've killed this reporter. If somebody finds out, I'm going to go to jail. Now I've killed my dad, and now Beth has leverage over me because she took that picture of me dumping him over, the cliff at the train station." So I think part of it may be guilt or regret, but a lot of it is just fear of what happens next. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to go to jail for that. I think that for Jamie is just kind of like self-preservation of like what happens now. Especially again, like you said, John is dead, so he's not there to clean up anybody's messes. Not only Beth's messes or Casey's messes, but his messes as well. So I do think it was a little bit of guilt and just kind of shock. I don't think he really thought it would happen, but apparently he just doesn't know Sarah Atwood very well, because that was her intention all along. And he keeps on getting played, and he's going to be a pawn. And I don't think you asked earlier, will market equities protect him? No, of course not. They're going to throw him under the bus. They're not going to protect him. Why should they protect him? After they get what they want, what do they get out of protecting Jamie?
Yeah, Texas Potter brings up a good point. A question. She said, "Did y'all get the feeling that Sarah Atwood was recording him when he came home and getting him to say to give her the green light?" Yeah, I think so. I mean, when the head of market equity said, "Let's release our pit bull," I believe Sarah Atwood is the type of person to cross all her T's, dot our I's, and everybody's disposable. Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's useful until they're not. And I have no doubt that she has something on Jamie in case Jamie either changes mind or Jamie goes against what market equities wants him to do. So no, I totally agree. I mean, we've already seen how far market equities will go. When it comes to eliminating people who don't go their way, and what they want. I think also too with Jamie, Jamie is.
I agree. Jamie is an idiot, and I think he needs a mother's love, and I think that's what maybe he is thinking all these women are doing. No, they don't care for you. They're just trying to get something out of you. Jamie, come on. And I've tried to give Jamie the benefit of the doubt in previous seasons, but now I'm like, you are so stupid.
Yeah. But also what I find so weird with Jamie is that as book smart as he is, a lawyer by trade, went to law school, very bright, putting out this healing his own father, Beth has dirt on you. Beth has photos of you dumping your father at the train station. What do you did you not think that she's not going to come out with this eventually? I don't understand what his motive was when Beth has physical photographical evidence of him discarding a body, so and I'm sure something tells me not just that, but something tells me the reporter shit's gonna come out too eventually. It's gonna come to the end as well. Another question I want to pose to you, Linnell, where do you think she's in play here? Do you think she knows anything in regards of what happened with John Dutton, or do you think she's kind of she doesn't know and she's kind of just an innocent bystander in all of this? Because I have thoughts on this, but I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh, good question. I don't think she knows, right, that it was a hit or that Jamie was behind it, market equities was behind it. I do think she may be suspicious, especially when Jamie told her he shot himself, and she said, don't tell them that, either because obviously she didn't want the public to know that about John because she doesn't want his image to be tarnished, but also she may not believe that he would do that. She knew him personally. She knew how he thought. So I don't think she expected him to do that. Texas Potterhead, you think she knows? She seemed real damn shady when she was talking to Jamie. Interesting. I didn't see that, so I'm gonna rewatch it to see if that comes out for me again. But my first instinct was that she doesn't know. But Frank, what are you thinking? Are you thinking Texas Potterhead?
I'm kind of with Potterhead on this, man. The way she moved, it's like she knew something before the news even came out, and in her way, it looked like she was kind of prepping Jamie, but she didn't have a look of loss. Because we know the off again, on again physical relationship that her and John had, and that coming out, she didn't look like she was shocked or in disarray or just flat out hurt. It looked like she was prepping Jamie for something she already knew prior. And
interesting.
I don't know if she's involved with market equities. I don't know if she has to gain on this, but I do know this. Politicians will always placate to what can benefit them when it comes to re-election. Airport, new developments, more economical jobs for a better economy, more jobs for the state of Montana means voting, voting power for her come election time. I think Linnell knows more than what she leads on.
Interesting. Yeah. You're right about the politicians. And yeah, that's interesting. She may think that being in line with market equities may be what would be good for Montana, right? Like she's also a fifth generation, like Montana rancher, but she may not have that connection anymore like John does. She may, obviously, like what she said to John was like, you've got to play the game. Like, yes, you want to save your ranch and save Montana, and that's great and wonderful, but there's also a thing called progress, and we can't just kind of like be stuck in the past. Like we can't leave our state stuck in the past. You've got to learn to play the game. So maybe that's what she's doing. She's playing the game. She doesn't want to get caught up in anything. She just may enjoy like being a powerful senator and now like placating again, like you said, to big business and big corporations and like seeing, building up her war chest. Maybe she has got bigger political ambitions for herself as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think when it comes to people in political power, no politician's ever said, yeah, I'm cool being a mayor. I'm fine with that. I don't want to be a governor, or I don't want to be an attorney general. I don't want to be a president. Like, I feel like all politicians have aspirations for more. And I think, and we saw this throughout the series too, with Linnell and John. They've had differences, and the visions collided of what they saw in Montana moving forward for the state of Montana. And I think John is more conservative in his ways of like the old way of just simple life, ranching, providing for his family, farmer life, all of that, where Linnell showed and demonstrated and conveyed to her that, look, that way of Montana is no more. We got to look for it. We got to look towards the future and look towards big business and being able to bring a better economy to the state. And if parts of the old way have to die for new growth for the state, so be it. That's a conversation we've seen on and off, mixed with, of course, sex and fucking with those two. But that's what we've seen for the better part of the series between those two throughout the last 6 seasons. I think too, there's been rumors about certain actors coming onto the show, right? We've heard Matthew McConaughey, we've heard Billy Bob Thornton. Do you think there's a surprise cameo or a surprise actor that a lost Dutton uncle, lost Dutton brother, who knows, that shows up to kind of like, I guess, fortify the Avengers Assemble side of the Dutton family?
That would be interesting. Yeah, I think whenever there were rumors circulating that Kevin Costner might leave, he may be replaced by Matthew McConaughey, or Matthew McConaughey would be joining. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet, like in this episode, and we don't know. I haven't read any reports that he has joined. I think that would be interesting. Billy Bob Thornton's in the new Landman show, so I doubt that they would have him also be on Yellowstone. But I think, yeah, like introducing a new character would bring more life into this show and just kind of add another layer to it, in addition to, like them avenging John or whatever. So I definitely think that would be interesting to see. And then I would be interested to know like what kind of character it is. Again, like you said, is it a long lost Dutton that is then going to help them save their ranch and like, save their legacy? Or would it be, somebody coming in from another state, that again wants to like change things up in Montana, bring more like more business to it. So yeah, I'm interested. I think it would be great to see somebody like Matthew McConaughey or just anybody else just really come onto the show and just breathe new life into it for the next 5 or however more episodes we have.
I agree. I think an actor of that ilk will be great for the show. I think it will spice things up for the show. I think it will help strengthen, for the storyline purposes, the Dutton family, because they don't have many soldiers left, right? Like, I mean,
Nope.
we know the bunkhouse, but I mean, a lot of those guys they're not soldiers, I mean, those guys are the ranchers, the cowboys, the cowgirls. They're not warriors like Rip is and Kacey, of hardened, military veteran. So it will, I think it will add spice to the show, because they're going against a Fortune 500 company, market equities. Like, they're going to need more than just a couple cowboys and cowgirls to fight against the impending doom of the ranch. With them trying to claim eminent domain and try to wipe out the ranch altogether. Um, I want to talk about another part of the show as well. We see Mo um, in this episode, along with Chief Thomas Rainwater. For those who don't remember, last season, they voted for the pipeline to come through, their land, throughout the reservation and all through their land. And we know with gas pipelines, they harm the environment. They poison water. They burst. They create a lot of damage to where it fucks with the ecosystem and the way of living for a lot of people. Even in the real world, this has always been an environmental issue, and they talk about that too in this episode about this future gas pipeline. Um, First off, I'm glad that they brought him back in this episode, because I feel like in season 5 it kind of veered off of that
Mhm.
of rainwater in the Native American nation in Montana. It focused more on John and the governor and all that kind of stuff. So with the last 4 episodes wrapping up, where do you think that leaves Rainwater, Mo, and the Native Americans of Montana with this pipeline?
Like Texas Potter had said, I also want to see more of Mo, of Chief Rainwater, even of Angela Bluefeather. I think she brings like another like devious aspect to the show that's kind of fun. Um, but I think we talked about it, last time when we were doing these Yellowstone pods, and when we were doing, 1883 or 1923, wasn't it like, the Duttons will have this land for 7 generations, and then it reverts back to the Native Americans. And I think like it had been counted, and it's like, nope, this is like the final generation after Tate. Now it reverts back to the native. So that would be interesting for that to happen, right? Like the Duttons don't win, market equities doesn't win, like the Native Americans win. That would be great, like justice finally for the tribes. Um, but I thought it was very poignant and interesting how when Rainwater and Mo were talking about, okay, the pipeline's going to come. If something happens, obviously this is going to affect our people. And then what happens was, Thomas's question. And Mo said, well, obviously we will say something. We will bring attention to it. To which Rainwater says, when have they ever paid attention to us? And the centuries that, the white man has been in what is now known as the US, there have been so many atrocities committed against the Native Americans. People speak up about it. The natives speak up about it. Nobody cares because they are seen as less than, they are seen as expendable. So I like that Taylor added that into it of saying, like, yes, we can speak up, but who's going to listen? Maybe that will then pivot this season for them into like, now we make them listen, right? Like now we're not just going to be sitting by, but actually like having people take notice and then not want to fuck with us anymore because you've been fucking with us for centuries. So yes, I definitely want more of Rainwater and Mo and just kind of more of like good things to happen for them rather than just everything has been bad for them throughout this whole series.
I have a theory about the several generations of Duttons going back to the Native Americans. Now I have a theory about the Native American storyline wrapping up. I also have a theory about the show wrap up, the season finale. So in 1883, they talk about, the Native American chief. They talked about how the 7 generations, like you eloquently said about it going back to their people at the 7 generations. Which person on the show has both the bloodlines of the white man and the Native Americans?
Rainwater.
Not just Rainwater.
Oh, Monica.
Not just Monica.
Dang it. Is there somebody else?
Tate.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Tate becomes the sole heir of Yellowstone.
Ooh.
And I think Tate's bloodline is going to play a part in preserving what is on Yellowstone, as far as not just the ranch, but for the Native Americans as well. I think that's going to play a part in keeping the land pure and keeping the land away from people who are trying to uproot the indigenous people of that land, the Dutton family. I think he's the key, and I think Tate, these next 4 episodes, is gonna be the one that keeps it together.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, because I think because he's been a child in the show, I don't really think about Tate. But yeah, that's a really good point, that he has that bloodline. He is the 7th generation, right? Like,
Exactly.
the future rests on him. Like, how do you move forward? Who do you appease? What do you protect? Obviously, he's very close and very in touch with his Native American side. So I don't think he would do anything, obviously, to the detriment of their community. But again, you never know what happens when you are in that position of, you have the power, and now how do you move forward, and how do you use that power, especially when you're so young? Like, how do you move forward? Do you let that power go to your head, or do you use it for the greater good?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, with him being so young, and I think too, like I think showing Tate in that episode how, because, and maybe I'm looking a little bit too much into it, but the panning of Tate, when the camera pans up to him as he's walking up the porch, walking towards Kacey and Monica, and you see that he's not a boy anymore; he's a young man. And I think what we're going to see moving forward is Tate taking more of a driver's seat of, as far as like his place, not amongst just the Dutton family line, but also his bloodline of being a Native American. And don't be surprised, man, if that ends with him being the sole heir of both lines. So yeah, man, what are your theories of how this ends? I mean, we have 4 episodes left. This everything's disarray now. So what do you think is going to happen moving forward?
Like I said, I think more bodies will hit the floor. More bloodshed. I think they will lose some of what they think Montana should be, or what they think the ranch should be. Yeah, like I said, I think more people die. I think there's more violence, and I think there's going to be more of this. And he's written this into this episode and a lot of episodes, where it's like, oh, like, the land as we know it is going to change. So I think there's going to just be more of like Taylor, like, hammering that into us of like, why do things need to change? And like, I don't, the Montana that we knew before is not going to be here any longer, and it's not going to be this way in 100 years. So I think there's going to be more of that. But kind of on the flip side, I'm like, yes, but what Montana was like 100 years ago is not what it is now, for better, for worse. At some point, you have to walk that line of like progress versus just keeping everything the same, because things have also improved, right? Like on the ranch, they're not, raising their cattle like they did 100 years ago. They have like better practices, better land management, better like feeding management, better disease control for their animals. So I think we're going to get a lot more of just kind of like Taylor's vision of like, should things change, or, things are changing too much.
Before we close, too, let's talk about the introduction. Well, not introduction, but more of a strong showing of the four sixes. This is like our
Yeah.
fifth time now that we've seen Texas in the Yellowstone show. We see Jimmy again, one of our fan favorites as well. Um, Now with this Four Texas show coming out next year, where do you think this plays moving forward with Jimmy and the new show for Texas? I'm sorry, for Texas, Four Sixes.
I'm very interested because I know like they've been talking about it again, probably for the last 2 years. I haven't read anything that says when it's actually going to be premiering or if they've actually filmed anything. But I think that would be just kind of an interesting segue and continuation of the Yellowstone universe to see Jamie and not Jamie, in a new to see Jimmy in a new light. To see just kind of like Texas represented in a show. I think that could be, great. What we've seen on Yellowstone so far of like their ranch, it seems like they're also like keeping up with tradition, but also doing things at scale like you would here in the present and not, being too set in their ways of like, oh, that's how like we used to do it, 100 years ago. Like they are a big successful ranch because they've known how to like walk that line of like progress and like maintaining your traditions. So I'm definitely like very interested, would be very excited for it to just finally come on. But again, I haven't seen anything that says this is when it's actually premiering. So I'm getting a little bit skeptical, like maybe it has been scrapped. Again, like I said, there's been 2 years that have happened. Lots has happened with Taylor Sheridan and his shows, and then like with the actors and writer strikes. So would be very interested for that. And then also 1923. When is that coming back? We need to see what happens with Spencer Dutton.
Yeah, I know 1923 is coming out December 6th. I saw the previews for that prior to this show. So we know that's coming out. Texas Party had brought up a question earlier. She said, how big of a role do y'all think Carter will play in all this moving forward, or how it may steer Rip in his actions moving forward? It's a good question. I think Carter is going to be the reminder for both Beth and Rip how to move. More so Rip.
Yeah.
Beth is on a rampage. She's willing to die for this shit. And but you forget, and I think a part of this too frustrates me too from the standpoint that you introduced this young kid 2 seasons ago to be kind of like the son, the child that Beth can never have. And for parts of season 4 and most season 5, he's forgotten. He shows up. He has a growth spurt now. He's different than
Yeah.
how he showed up 2 years ago. So you kind of lose the connection of what they were trying to build with him in season 4. But I think if they do it right, I think what Carter's going to be is a reminder that Rip and Beth have more to live for, and more than just the ranch, more so than
Yeah.
just John Dunn's memory. But you have a child now. If this,
Yeah.
if you guys die, he's an orphan again. And I think more so for Rip, I think Rip sees a lot of himself in Carter, because Carter, like Rip, Carter was an orphan. He was cast, he was thrown to the side and cast away like yesterday's trash. And I think you're gonna see a level of maturity for Rip to understand that, look, I can't do what Rip always does, kick ass and ask questions later. I gotta be cognizant that we have a mouth to feed now. We have a young kid to raise and develop now. And yeah, so I think moving forward, I think Carter is gonna be hopefully a big role. Now, how much does he impact as far as speaking lines? We don't know, but I will say this. I think Rip is going to be more closely affected by Carter, and as far as his thought process and decision making moving forward. What do you think, Marcy?
Yeah, I agree with you on Rip just kind of putting his best interest too. I don't know yet if Beth can see that in her rage and in her grief. She may not be thinking that way. All she may be thinking right now is, how do I fuck Jamie up for killing my dad? And I think maybe that's all she's going to see for a while. So I'm hoping that her rage doesn't blind her to the fact of like, you have your husband and you have Carter. Again, don't lose them just because you're trying to get revenge for your dad. So yeah, it'll be interesting what happens with Carter. It'll be interesting to see how Carter takes it, because he had built a strong relationship with John, right? Like they had started riding the horses together and he would like saddle up his horse for him. So I think he's also going to take it hard. And will we see him become like Rip 2.0, where again, like he's carrying on like Rip's tradition of like sending people to the train station when they've done something wrong. So who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The last question is, where's Summer? I thought she was staying with John and we didn't see her at all. That's a good question. Summer is the environmentalist vegan woman that had the all-out brawl at the dinner table last season with Beth. We haven't seen her since. I know I think if I remember correctly, she left. I think John let her leave, or 'cause I think John sprung her out of prison.
Right. Yeah. And she was under house arrest.
Yeah, under house arrest. So
at the ranch, because it was understood that she was going to be under John's watch. I also wondered, where is Summer? And my first thought was, oh my gosh, are they going to kill John and then also kill Summer and make it look like something shady? It doesn't seem like that's what they've done, because they haven't said like there was a second body found, right? Like, but that could have also been just something that they could have done, right? Like be like, oh, it's a murder suicide, right? Like she would have just been collateral damage. I don't know if Summer will be back or if they will just be like, oh, like she's just forgotten, or they're just going to send her back to jail because John is gone. So they might be like, well, back off to jail you go. Nobody likes the environmentalists here anyway, so you've got to go to jail. I don't know. I haven't read anything about her coming back or not for this season.
Yeah, I haven't either. I mean, with 4 episodes left, I don't know how much she will play a role in this. So yeah, this is a weird. I mean, as excited as I was for this premiere, I was equally as concerned and worried about where it's gonna go. I mean, if it does crash and burn, give me a lot of Beth and a lot of Rip, and give me worn torn bloodbath rampage. Give me that. Now, whether the story comes together as a whole, we'll see. But I'm excited for what Beth and Rip may have moving forward, and as well as Kacey. We see, I don't know if you saw the trailer for next week, but we see Kacey in the back seat of a car that Jamie's driving or Jamie's in, and he looks pissed. And the look on Kacey's face, it looked like he found out and put 2 and 2 together that Jamie's behind it. So I'm interested to see how Kacey moves and where that looks like moving forward for Jamie. Marcy, do you have any other thoughts regarding this episode?
I wish there would have been more actual storyline. I think they spent a lot of time just showing the crew down in Texas and talking about how, you can't say certain things anymore, right? It just kind of seemed like, written by an old white man complaining about what you can't say anymore. It's like, who cares? Like, why are we like spending 5 minutes on this stupid bullshit? I want to see more story. And I think this episode had a lot of filler, so I want to see less filler and more action in coming episodes. I also want to know what happened with Jamie's son. Like we haven't seen him since season 4. So what happens with his son? I want to see Jamie like get his comeuppance, right? Like you can't just order a hit on your adoptive father and just kind of get to ride off into the sunset. Because I don't think he will, though. He's not smart enough to outlive Sarah Atwood and Market Equities and just survive, or like even like survive Beth and Rip. So Jamie, I don't think is also long for this world. We'll see what happens with Beth and Kacey and Rip and everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Jamie, you better ratchet up the security detail, because they come for you, bro. They are coming for you. And I don't think he's long for his world either. I think, and I'll make a prediction very soon. I think Jamie dies before the finale. I don't think it's the finale. I think the show is going to revolve around pick up the pieces post Jamie and post John, and how does that look like moving forward for the ranchers and for everybody involved. Again, thank y'all so much for watching this podcast. I've said this many times, but I mean it every single time. We don't do this without you guys. And please, man, if you have thoughts, please like, comment, share, subscribe. I mean, Brittany talks about this all the time. We have people who watch our shows all the time, but don't subscribe. So definitely subscribe, get all the latest content of all our shows, not just Yellowstone, but, we just wrapped up the Penguin this past Monday. We have the NFL Football Weekly on Tuesdays. We have a lot of shows coming up for December as well. So please subscribe and hit the notification bell as well. Find out on all our social media platforms on the description box below down here. We also have audio podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify as well. Be sure to give us a follow and give us a 5-star rating. For myself, for Marcy, we are the Yellowstone Pod. We'll be here on a weekly basis. Thank y'all so much, man. We love y'all. Peace out.